Yeah.
Speaking with Gary Bartz. So, Gary, we talk about your time with the Jazz Messengers, and who was in that band with you during that period?
Um, Lee Morgan. Well, I'll tell you the story. So I go down and I sit in with them, and so Boo, we call Art Boo Heenan. He he hired me right there, you know. So I joined the band from my dad's club, but I had worked with Max Roach and Abby Lincoln for back a year earlier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was the first band. The first band I was ever in was Max Roach.
Wow.
Yeah, because I met Max that same year that when I played, ended up playing with Sonny Stitt when I was 14. I went down to the Club Casino in Baltimore where Max was working with Clifford Jordan, Julian Priestley, um, and I sat in there, and he called Charlie Parker tunes, which that was right up my alley. So, and so Max gave me his number. So when I moved to New York when I was 17, I called him and I started going by his house and I'd go by their house. And so I was there, but with Art, so I'm like I say, I've been living in New York since '58. And my dad said, well, look, he called me in New York. He said, I understand Art's saxophone player is getting ready to leave the band. He heard about it some kind of way. And he said, why don't you come down and sit in with him? And so that's what I did. And I came down and Lee Morgan was the straw boss, so he would have had to co-sign it, because I'm standing next to him. So, but my friend John Hicks was trying to get me in the band anyway. John was in the band,
Yeah.
and Victor Sproles was in the band. So I joined the band right there with John Gilmore, and for about a month, it was a sextet because Gilmore didn't leave right away.
John Gilmore from Sun Ra, John Gilmore?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, I took John Gilmore's place.
Wow. It's incredible. What was Lee Morgan like? Because he's only 2 years older than you, but you said he was a straw boss. What was he like as a person to deal with?
Lee was, such a giant. He was such a giant. My parents used to take me to New York take me and my sister to New York during the summer for vacations. And we always had to go back to nightclubs to hear the music because the whole family loved the music. And every time we'd go, it would be Dizzy Gillespie would be there. I guess that was his mom, And one time I saw Dizzy with the big band. And I see this young kid who was the star of the band. I said, who is this? And he got the break on Night Tunisia. He was Charlie Purcell, Lee Morgan, and Dizzy Gillespie had on the same uniforms. They were the stars. The rest of the band had a different uniform, So right then and there, I knew in my mind, I said, I know I can do this. I know I can do this because he seemed to be my age. He was just 2 years older than me. I was 15. He was 17.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I knew I could do that.
Incredible.
He was so. People still don't recognize the impact and his way of playing, his style, because people, I met Freddie Hubbard also when I moved to New York right away.
Right.
So he's the same thing, 2 years older. And he was more advanced than I was harmonically. He knew his chords. He knew, I could read music, but I didn't understand chords. If you called them out to me, I wouldn't know what you were saying. But I could hear them, so it didn't matter. See, that's the thing. You only memorize chords if you can't hear them. If you can hear them, why do you need to name it? It's like, I might as well name each note. Okay, I'm playing an F, I'm going to a D, I'm going to play E flat now. You might as well do that,
Speaking with Gary Bartz here on Jazz 90.1. So, Gary, it's interesting. So, for the time you were the Jazz Messengers, what, 2 years, and then you went back to Max?
No, I was with Max for a year, and then I was with Art for about a year and a half.
Okay.
And with Max, I kept going back to Max. I kept going back to Art whenever Art needed me. See, if Art fired you, you was gone. if he didn't fire you, but you just ended up not being in the band, you were still a messenger. And
Got
so
it.
he would call you for whenever he needed you, you know. So I worked one time, one band of arts Blaine I worked in was Chick Corea, Junie Booth's first gig in New York. That was
Wow.
his first gig, and Chuck Mangione.
Mm.
So that was that band. You know, so I worked in one band with Frank Mitchell, Curtis Fuller, you know, myself. I think John Hicks was in that band, and Victor. So yeah,
That's wow. I just think of it, that core of musicians you just mentioned, and people that crew, yourself, Lee Morgan, Chuck Mangione, Herbie Hancock, McCoy
mhm.
Tyner, that generation, Freddie Hubbard. I mean, you guys literally changed the sound of the music and brought so many people to this music because they were able to do so many different things. But for you guys, what was it like being in the laboratory? Because you worked with Miles, of course, and then you had your own thing going on. I can't even imagine those. Not only that, you had all these amazing changes going around in the world that you were a part of and watching it happen. I mean, there's no
Mhm.
way you could be, to quote one of the songs, deaf, dumb, and blind. So how did you incorporate the music you had with the times you were living in back in the 60s and early 70s?
Well, you know, it's see, that's a funny thing about music and about especially this music, because you have musicians who they're musicians. That's what they do. They play music. That's how they make their living.
Right.
And then you have artists whose medium is music. So they have a different mindset. They have different agendas, different goals. They're not it's not just about playing, making money, you know, feeding the family. But of course we all have to do that, you know, but that's not the main emphasis. An artist whose medium is music is trying to use music for good things, to heal, to do the things that music I think was originally used for. I feel and think, and a lot of research kind of proves it, that music was the first religion
Mm,
before anything organized, you know, before people even knew each other existed. Music was always at the ceremonies of the
yeah.
births, the lives, you know, the deaths, the harvest, whatever, the fishermen, you know, they always had to have music, and people, and especially in Africa. In Africa, I found out that a lot of the musicians were handicapped because they couldn't do the things they needed to do, like go out and hunt.
Right. Right.
You know, you need to fight for your family. You know, you got to do it. So they were the handicapped. You know, the blind, the you know,
Right.
people like that. Yeah. So that's a difference. You know, between you got the music, and there's nothing wrong with that if you that's what you choose. You know, but if you choose music as your art form, then you're thinking more than let me play this guy's arrangement. You know, you're trying to create your own music. You're trying to create something.
Right. Right.